Sherwin?
Mr. Mark Cuban, how are you, sir?
Just another day in paradise. Happy to talk to you.
Happy for you to be talking to me. So we're in the home stretch, Mark, and
Yes,
the polls they're shifting. Everything is still within the margin of error. But how do you think this election is going to shape up, considering everything that's at stake?
I think Kamala's going to win. I mean, that's why I'm doing this. I think she's better for the country, better for business. I think she wants to lift us up and bring us together, the exact opposite of everything Donald Trump is saying. So I'm excited for her to win.
That's what I really want to ask you about, because as someone who knows business probably better than anybody else on the planet, we're trained to think that very successful people will always default to Donald Trump. You don't see it that way. Tell us why.
No, I mean, look, Donald Trump has had his success, but you got to look where it is and how that applies to real people. He took over Trump Organization from his dad. He had a lot of success in some real estate, but the job is not doing real estate. The job is not picking curtains and fixtures for a hotel or a golf course. That is not the job. The job is running this country, and that takes digging in and understanding policy. And so Donald Trump really hasn't had experience with small businesses. So when you talk about startup costs, he had a $5,000 deduction for startup companies. Kamala Harris jacked that up to $50,000. He did nothing for child care credit. Kamala Harris put together $6,000 tax credit for child care. She talked about starting 25 million businesses over the years. He talked about nothing about health care, and you know very well the greatest fear any small or medium-sized business has, and the greatest fear every household has, is an unexpected health care expense. Kamala Harris has been very specific to say she understands that the reason the cost of drugs is going up is because of the pharmacy middlemen and the lack of transparency. And she has said very specifically that's exactly what she's going to introduce. She's going to introduce policies that move aside the pharmacy middlemen when they're setting high prices and introducing transparency so that prices will go down. And we've seen that happen before, and it will happen again with it. She understands tariffs. She knows that tariffs can be strategic when you're trying to protect an industry, but across-the-board tariffs just cost everybody money. Think about what happens at Christmas. If this time next year, if Donald Trump is won, and he puts a 60% tariff on imported Chinese goods, people don't really realize how many things they buy on a day-to-day basis or on Christmas that are made in China. So all of a sudden, everything from paper plates to books to backpacks to sporting goods, they're going up 60% or more. And not only are you not going to be able to afford the things you really want to get your family for Christmas, but the companies buy from all those really cool small businesses across Wisconsin that have been around for 30 years, all of a sudden they're getting less business during what they hope to be the busiest time of their year. And that hurts their small business. So Kamala Harris understands that with small businesses, tariffs are a killer. With all households, tariffs just jack up your costs and can literally cost you a great business.
Mark, I want to talk about a couple of threats that Donald Trump represents. And the first threat I want to talk about is his running mate, not J.D. Vance, but Elon Musk. Can you shed some light on exactly how dangerous Elon Musk is being, I'm going to call him a part of the ticket?
Yeah, I don't blame you, right? He basically told Elon to take over his ground game, right, to get out the vote game. Donald Trump effectively admitted that the Republican Party and him as head of it don't know how to run a ground game. So they just outsourced it to Elon. And Elon, I don't know if he knows what he's doing, but it can't be going that well if Elon's having to pay people $1 million just to have a sweepstake for them to sign a petition. You don't do that if you're acting from a position of strength. But it's even worse than that, and you nailed it. That's a great perspective you have in that Elon Musk on X Twitter is a troll, and he's just trolling everybody and just lying his ass off to Trump. And I don't think that was well on him, but importantly, I don't think that's what American people want to see. Twitter's become its own little world, but for the rest of us don't spend all day on Twitter. All they see is Elon Musk just saying stuff that just doesn't make sense.
It's terribly frightening, and also how algorithms can be manipulated, and we're, of course, very worried about AI and about fake news. And Elon Musk being any part of this campaign should be a huge threat and a warning sign to everybody.
Yeah, it's a red flag for sure, particularly since he controls the algorithms himself on Twitter, and he said he was going to open source them. any of the changes since March of 23. So, I don't know how much you can really trust Elon Musk, and we know we can't trust Donald Trump.
Mark, why do you think the people aren't taking Donald Trump seriously? When he says he wants to be a dictator for a day, when he wants to suspend the Constitution, when he wants to give the police basically immunity, why are people not taking him seriously?
That's a great question. When you're a surrogate for Donald Trump, your whole day is trying to explain to people he doesn't mean what he says. When he says he's going to do mass deportation, believe him. When he says he's literally going to put people in camp, believe him. When he says the United States is the garbage can for the rest of the world, believe that he does not believe in this country the way every other American does. I mean, it just pisses me off to no end that somebody would say that about our country. But you're exactly right. I mean, the things he says just to denigrate so many people in this country, and people are like, oh, that's just him. He doesn't mean it. He means it. He did it before. He'll do it again.
So, Mark, what kind of campaigning are you doing for the ticket? Are you traveling? Are you talking to voters? What do you have going on?
Yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today, and where I'm spending most of my time is doing town halls with small businesses. So that, because between Shark Tank and all the companies I've started and invested in, I have a ton of experience being able to explain the impact of taxes, knowing that 99% of companies are small businesses, 99% of those are passed through, 99% of those the entrepreneur makes $400,000 or less. So I'm telling them that if you're a small business owner, your taxes are either staying the same or going down. I'm talking to them about her health care plan that we talked about and the fact that, pharmacy benefit managers jack up the price of your drugs, and she's doing something about it. Donald Trump has a concept of a plan. Talking about tariffs, like we just said, where tariffs cost every single business, every single consumer, money on every imported good. And if you put a 60% tariff on goods impacted from China, your household expenses are going up, not going to be able to afford all you want for Christmas. And all those little, local stores that you love to visit, they may go out of business because so much of their revenue comes during Christmas time that if you can't afford to buy as many toys and gifts for your family, your business is going to hurt. And then deportation. I mean, Donald Trump is literally putting up signs saying he's for mass deportation. Look, we all have our, thoughts about the border, but Kamala Harris is very strong on the border. She signed the Langford bill. She talked about anybody here who's here illegally that committed a crime, they're going to be deported. She talked about if you cross the border illegally and you've been here 5 years or less, you're going to have to go back out and then come back in. Those are all valid approaches. But what she's also said is that we're going to try to figure out a plan for those folks who are undocumented that have been here longer. We don't want to be in a position where grandma has been here for 30 years. She has 4 American children. She has 10 American grandchildren. We're going to find a way to get her path to documentation so she can stay. Donald Trump wants to take grandma and grandpa who have been here all those years and deport them. That's not who we are. Yes, we want a strong border. Yes, we want to make sure everybody comes in legally. Yes, we want to increase the amount of legal immigration, but we want to do it humanely. Donald Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care if he's dragging your grandma out the door and putting her in a deportation. That's just wrong.
Mark, let's just make it easy. If you supported Donald Trump, you'd get a tax cut, right? How come you're not in it for the tax cut?
Yeah, I would get a tax cut. There's nothing he's saying that would lower my taxes at all, not a nickel. He's talked about, okay, for some companies, if you move your manufacturing from overseas here, but I don't have any manufacturing overseas. I have manufacturing here in the United States, so that's not going to help me. He's not talked about lowering any other taxes that benefit me at all. He's talked about things that are going to cost me more. He doesn't have a clue about healthcare. Those tariffs are going to crush. I'll tell you a little secret. We just finished shooting Shark Tank this past season, season 16 that's on now. And one of the questions that Kevin O'Leary, myself, and other sharks would ask is, if Trump is elected and there's a 60% tariff on imports from China, how does that impact your business? And one after the other, every single entrepreneur said it would dramatically hurt their business. And many of them did not get a deal because of the potential impact of tariffs. And so Donald Trump just does not understand that tariffs are a tax, but more importantly, they take money straight out of the bank account of hardworking Americans, hardworking small businesses.
Mark, here we are in the final days before the actual election day. Early voting has started in Wisconsin. What would you say to folks who are still on the fence, who don't know who they're going to cast their vote for?
We all work for somebody or have our own business. If you want a president that cares about the business you work for, the business you own, that's Kamala Harris. She's putting together the programs that make it so, the people in your family, the people that you work with, can get lower-cost medications and lower-cost health care. She's making it so that your company doesn't go out of business or lay you off because of imports and tariffs that at 60% or across-the-board tariffs, because we are the ones that pay for it. Consumers pay for that. She wants to make sure that your communities are not turned upside down by Gestapo-like tactics of people knocking on doors asking for if there's any undocumented immigrants in your home. That's just not who we are. And so if you're on the fence, you want somebody who's stable, who's smart, who's open-minded, who's not dogmatic, is pragmatic, and that basically cares. We hear it all the time. Donald Trump cares about no one but himself. But what we don't hear people say is the impact that lack of caring has on them, the impact on their families. And it truly does make a difference. So that's why I'm out here saying vote for Kamala Harris. Get your friends, get your family, get everybody you know to vote for Kamala Harris, because you don't want to wake up one morning and all of a sudden everything costs 60% more because he thought China paid for the tariffs. You don't want to wake up one morning and there's sirens everywhere because they're dragging somebody out of a house in your neighborhood because they found somebody who's lived here for 30 years but was undocumented. You don't want to live in a world where you have uncertainty because one morning he gets upset at John Deere and decides to tweet about him and say he's going to put a 200% tariff, and everybody who works at John Deere and their vendors is scared of losing their job. We need stability, and we need somebody who cares, somebody who's smart, somebody who understands policy. No one's ever said about Donald Trump he really has an in-depth understanding of policy, just the opposite. Everything he does is cursory and no depth to it whatsoever. Kamala Harris understands policy. She understands what's good for business. She understands what's good for small business. She understands what's going to help the American people.
Mr. Mark Cuban, tech guru, businessman extraordinaire, and absolutely my favorite shark. Mark, before you go, I got to ask you this. Who is your favorite shark to do a deal with?
Barbara Corcoran. Barbara, if you ask her what 10 times 10 is, she'll have no idea that it's 100. But if you ask her to talk to an entrepreneur and that entrepreneur's team and let her talk to them for 20 minutes, she'll know whether that entrepreneur is going to be a great entrepreneur, better than anybody I've ever met on this planet. She's got that skill that's so amazing.
Thank you, sir. Season 16 of Shark Tank is out now. A pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much for all you're doing on the campaign trail.
I appreciate it. Great questions. Thanks so much, and let's go, Kamala.
Let's go, Kamala.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You were listening to The Truth with Sherwin Hughes on 101.7 FM. We'll be right back.
The Truth with Sherwin Hughes returns after this on 101.7 The Truth, The Truth app, and 1017thetruth.com.